someone who has some kind of handicap, or either physical or mental.
A student with a disability is a student that breaks from the normal student in that they have a disability.
Anyone who has maybe trouble learning or has just a harder way of living, like someone who is blind and couldn't necessarily see, or just anyone who needs a little extra help to learn normally.
I think that a student with a disability is a student that may learn differently than others, and this may require some more time to process the information, but they don't necessarily are not learning the information, they just may process it differently, may need more time, but they're still intelligent and they still are going to be learning the same information as every other student.
Well, a student with disability to me is just someone that's a little different than I am, and I don't really view it as either a bad or a good thing. You know, and we all feel so bad for people with disabilities, and I think that's kind of stupid because they seem to be some of the happiest people in the world.
A student with a disability is somebody that thinks differently. Their mind works a little bit differently than the average child, so they can't learn academically and socially to the same level as an average child.
It doesn't learn at the same pace as their peers are, so that could be a variety of things like ADHD or all the way to Down syndrome. So this is a variety of things, in my opinion. Somebody that doesn't learn at the same pace. In certain circumstances, yes, depending on the disability, in my opinion, because some disabilities allow you to be able to function around others in a way that you don't slow everybody down. But if you have a disability such as some strands of Down syndrome or Asperger's or whatnot, then sometimes those cases are a little bit touchy and maybe they might need more attention.
If the disability is not overly severe, then they should.
If someone had a really severe disability, then maybe it would benefit them to be with a group that was more catered towards them, or in a smaller group so that they could get more attention. But if it's just something minor, like maybe someone needs a little extra time on a test or something, it might benefit them to learn with people who just don't have that disability so that they can still feel normal about it.
I think there's a good learning opportunity for students to get together. I think some of it needs to be separated so that they can learn things on their own that they don't catch quickly as other students, but I think that the opportunity for them to work off of each other would be a great opportunity, in my opinion.
That's actually a good question. I think it depends on the extent of their disability. Like I said, I mean, being disabled is kind of a spectrum. Yeah, it's a spectrum, really.
Yes, I do, because I think that every teacher should expect them to have the same level of understanding as other students, and I think that if you expect that level, then they'll rise to that level, and other students will help them get to that level of education as well. And I also believe that if you separate them, they're going to kind of think that there's something wrong with them as a student, and that's going to go into their future, and that's going to make them insecure. And so I think that everyone just needs to work together and to have everyone rise to the same level.
They should have the option to be educated with their non-disabled peers. Like if they want to be in a class with only people that have the same disability, then they should be able to pick that, or just being in a normal classroom.
I think that there's certain cases that they should be and certain that they shouldn't be. Some disabilities are more severe than others, and I think that some people or some students require special treatment.
What? I did not know that was a thing.
I actually really didn't even know that was an issue. If I had to say something off the top of my head, maybe just the way that they file for disabilities, I would assume. That would be the only thing that would come to mind. I didn't even know that was really a major problem.
I really don't know. Maybe it's genetic.
I didn't know that was a thing.
I think it might have to do with just the fact that demographically African Americans tend tend to be more poor, and so then they don't have the resources that other students might in order to not necessarily overcome the disabilities, but work through it and get the attention that they need. So then later on, more students would identify with learning disabilities.
Because the group as a whole is considered impoverished and cannot afford the outside help.
To be honest, I've never heard that because I went to a predominantly black school as it is, and the white kids that were at my school outrighted us in those classes. So I don't know that fact at all, to be honest.
That's like a very tough question, but sometimes I believe that it's more of a cultural thing in the past where in that culture maybe education hasn't been in the forefront.
That's a hard question. I guess they're more likely to be diagnosed as, I don't know. I don't know that.
The people I interviewed were pretty split in half about their definitions of someone with a disability. About half went with the stereotypical idea of the very restricting disabilities like being blind or handicapped, and the other half realized that it goes beyond wheelchairs and stuff, and it carries into small things like ADHD that make it hard for children to learn in the classroom. And I think that everybody was pretty much on the same page about being educated with their non-disabled peers. They said it depended on the disability and the severity of it, and if it hinders other people's learning, then they shouldn't be educated in the gen ed classroom. But if it doesn't, then the student would probably benefit from being with their peers. I thought it was really surprising that not that many people knew that there was a disproportionality about African Americans being labeled as disabled, but I think that comes from if you're not in the education world and hearing people talk about those kind of things, then it's not really talked about in society, so they have no way of knowing. And I also thought that it was odd that people got really uncomfortable when I asked that question. A few of them they kept stuttering and they were like, this is a hard question. And I think it's just because people don't like to admit that those kinds of things are an issue. They would just rather ignore it because it doesn't, they don't have to feel uncomfortable about it.